Eric, it has been said behind every great man is even greater men. And that's how I feel today. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. I think it's very bold and brave of you just to, record in clearly a gym in New Zealand that, you have no COVID cases, so you could be there. There is just a man hunk behind you, though, if I'm being perfectly transparent. If you just look behind you, yep. Oh, there's...
Oh, my goodness.
No,
and that's, what's impressive about that is not that he's curling relatively light weights.
Yep.
It's that he has been able to hold that peak tension position of the 90-degree elbow. He's still holding it, folks. I think he's doing one of the most hardcore isometrics we've ever seen. Whoever that is, and I have no idea who it could be, is impressive.
Whomever it may be, I just feel that if they competed in 2019, they totally would win a show in Northern California. I feel that whomever it is, they probably also are very knowledgeable. Like I'm just putting forth some different ideas here. And maybe if we could have a trifecta, Eric, of myself, you, and that gentleman, spitting knowledge, that would be incroyable.
Was that French?
So you know what? I only took the first 3 years. I'm gonna go with yes. That's how you pronounce it in French. I'm doubling down.
Well, it's not like you live in a country where that's one
Bilingual.
of the official languages, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, I totally. It's not one of the few classes because my French teacher, was very, let's say, proud of their lineage, that they would look down upon you, of course, if you spoke in English. And I was sent outside of the classroom for refusing to use, because I said, hey, around here we speak English, and that started a whole war. It was a big deal. It was in the news. Let's move on from that, though.
Yeah, I think free speech only applies to English anyway. So
right, yeah.
I was gonna say American.
Yeah,
but for you, I kept it as English. I guess I should have said North American. That's inclusive, but still exclusive as it needs to be for my nationalist stance.
Exclusive. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I will say, before we go on, because we're going to have a fantastic episode, and that's what we were just joking about a little bit there, is the concept that less might be more, or that what is hardcore really? A real examining of what it means to be hardcore, or what it means to get after your goals, and how for maybe a broad group of individuals, the Iron Cult included, sometimes what we tend to focus on might not be the thing that push the needle forward. Eric, before we really get into it, though, we've been promising this for months and months and months, and like any terrible parent, we have not kept our promise. We make several assurances. And we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna take you to Christmas. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? What do you want to see? Oh, you want to see Lethal Weapon 4? You want to see Jingle All the Way? Yeah, most definitely. Jingle All the Way comes.
You want presents on your 10th birthday, on the actual day of the birthday?
Whoa.
I mean, yeah, we'll definitely get that in one of the next few years.
Yeah, Eric and myself totally had extremely normal childhoods, and it's not one of the things that we bonded over. But with that being said, and we're not repeating mistakes of the past, so it's just intergenerational now trauma. So with that being said, we are just randomly going to be reading some reviews that we promised we would read from you guys. And because we are incredibly lazy, I am just going to read, Eric, the top 3, top 4, because they're all real quick. If you want to leave a rating and review, the best place, because Apple rules everything around us, would be iTunes, because that is a convenient place. Spotify, as of yet, I don't think you can leave a review. As well as on YouTube, you can leave a comment, but that will be attached to the episode and not to the podcast overall. So people have been extremely generous. I'm actually surprised by the reviews. And so the latest one, January 16th, Eric, was someone who said 5 stars. It's 5 out of 5. Just let the record reflect. You can leave any rating and review. Amazing podcast. You can learn a lot with this podcast. They actually put time and bring so many great athletes on. I learned a lot about hypertrophy and the science behind it. Wow. Totally not a paid actor, Eric. Yeah.
No, I remember leaving. I remember the person who left that review. I mean, I don't know them. I didn't do it.
Yeah, the username says Berto Nunez. So that's a nice guy, whoever left that review. Yeah, it doesn't ring a bell to me at all, no?
Never heard of him.
Okay, cool.
No.
Yeah, another one. So Jay Beyrube 335. Don't know who that is too. I don't know why we feel the need to disclose that before we read the reviews. My conscience is clear. Hypertrophies. Someone said, is an amazing podcast. As a biology student with a degree in jazz guitar who also happens to be a lifting movie buff, Omar hits the spot so very well with all his metaphors and comparisons. Dr. Eric Helms is one of the brightest minds in the field, and I can listen to this duo banter endlessly alongside their knowledge-dropping guests. This podcast is a must. Keep up the amazing work, guys.
I mean, this person must be real, because if they weren't, it sounds like you and I got together and had a powwow about, like, what would our child be like?
Hey.
How about a jazz playing biology student?
Could it be our
it's
child?
pretty amazing.
Shall we explore this question further? Bend the limits of science, my friend.
That would be like a biological. I mean, you know what? He would know. We should ask him.
You know,
and are we your father?
Final two. The final two, they're very very quick. Sorry. Bait and switch, someone said, I came for the anti-capitalist agate prop, but I stayed for the cultural indoctrination.
See, I as a hardcore anarcho-capitalist, I struggle with that one, but I also support the free speech. So
we're conflicted.
I guess being conflicted is the state where we need to be to have dissension lead to a more involved proletariat in our ability to express ourselves. I'm just randomly saying words that sound political. Yeah, we sound informed. The next one just says, it's actually 1 star, and it simply says, shit sandwich. I'm sure that one was a typo, so we'll move on for that. No. And then lastly, the fourth most recent one, someone said, I will force my children to listen to this podcast. Formal threat and complaint. If Omar and Sir Helm stop the banter, I will sue. We are actually tired of getting sued. It was a 5-star review. We can't handle it. Our lawyers in Delaware, who are very real, tell us, you're giving us a lot of business, keep it coming. But the emotional and financial stress it places upon the people that try and sue us, not us, is immense. Yeah, I mean, you got to decide to prioritize your peace at some point. In our case, it's other people's pieces, because we, of course, have an unassailable will. Flying through space, pulling ourselves by our bootstraps, unable to be phased by the haters. But so while we would gladly sue everyone else into oblivion, we understand that being sued into oblivion does cause some mental stress, and we're anti-mental stress here at Iron Culture. So.
Yeah, the only mental stress that should be incurred here is from failures in the gym. And that is a nice, perfectly natural segue to talk about the topic for today. It's another duo episode. We have a duo episode not because we contacted every conceivable guest that we could think of, and they all turned us down because they said, quote unquote, this is a far too controversial podcast. I thought this was about exercise science. Why are you guys talking about Paimon? The concept of being hardcore or getting after your goals, Eric, or really we joke, less is more, how less can be more. And there's some notion that if you take seemingly the path that has the higher likelihood of success, well, it might not appear more hardcore because you're not being perhaps as meticulous about things that designate one being hardcore, such as weighing every single food item you eat, waking up instead to train, of course, at what time? 5 a.m. Because why would you train at a reasonable time when you're well rested, when you can actually be sleep deprived and get to the gym before everyone else? Because money talks and bullshit walks. The concept of being hardcore and what it really means and what one can do if they're listening to this episode to change some of the variables in their life so they're actually making more progress and not less. Like, this is a troubleshooting episode for the listeners, and this is based on our experience as well as the research.
Yeah, so there's a reason I selected my failed Animal Pack sponsored ad submission behind me. It's a black and white picture of me curling.
Oh, it's you!
It is me. I
You look incredible.
wanted to drop that bombshell. Thank you. This is actually not a joke.
Yeah.
If the whole picture fit in the frame, you would see me, like, my face looking like I'm yelling in this picture, which is actually a very brief frame of me in the middle of a curl, just opening my mouth for a second, and it makes it look like I've been screaming in the gym while curling light weights, which is really the only way to curl light weights in the gym.
Sir Dominance.
That's right. So I think it's an apt picture that is perfect for the topic of hardcoreness. And I think hardcore is one of those things that people, they know what it feels like, but they don't know what it means.
Oh, that Eric, I thought you were going to go on because that was a great.
No,
just
nothing else to say.
Hey, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to the reviews, and we'll catch you in the next one every single Monday.
Yeah, I'm just here to say vapid truisms that make me sound intelligent, and then peace out while you're considering whether there is actual wisdom there.
It was like the perfect springboard.
There was not.
I'm honestly forgetting the film real quick with Javier Bardem, but it was like the perfect springboard where you think you're about to launch into this beautiful, like you're going to dissect it, break it down, reassemble it so people can easily understand it. But instead he goes headfirst into the water and he actually becomes a quadriplegic. And it actually is about euthanasia, the film. So not to get too dark or anything, but I feel like that's what, we're setting ourselves up like, oh, my boy, hey, yeah, hardcore. Yeah, but you don't know what it is. I'm like, go, Eric. He's like, I'm done. I'm like, oh, shit.
I don't know what it is. I have nothing to say. Yeah, but seriously, I think people do have an emotional feeling of what it is to be hardcore. To say that this is something that I enjoy giving my all to, that I enjoy the sacrifices. It does have this almost, I think, subtext of masochism, and I think it has this feeling of I'm willing to do what's necessary, even if that is painful. The concepts of blood, sweat, and tears, and many of the tropes we hear. And I'm absolutely not anti-hardcore. I would say that was a huge part of my identity, and still is to some degree, with the way I approach my goals. But I think it's been blended interestingly with my exposure to the scientific method, rational skepticism, empirical discovery of new ideas, and being a thinking lifter, and then also trying to use weightlifting as a vehicle for personal growth, and hopefully helping people find ways to take the lessons that are in the weight room and the kitchen and have them be applied to life so that they can be more successful. And that has been a very interesting cauldron, witch's brew, that I have put together into kind of coming up with my own personal philosophy related to lifting that's a little more expanded from the simple, just crush it kind of mentality I started with, which there's nothing wrong with, but I think misapplied or not thought through, or honestly, which we're going to talk about, used as a crutch. I think that is a distinct mentality that one is clearly problematic, as those who care about social justice would say, and which I do. Not to say I'm not hating. I just find the word problematic, sometimes problematic. Anyway,
Eric,
I'm getting off topic, but the point is, the hardcore mentality can be applied in ways that is utilitous or not. And I think we're going to try to differentiate between what those are.
Eric, well said. The only part I disagree that it just wrenched my stomach when you implied that the physical growth one experience in the gym can lead to personal growth, which just sounded a little too hippy dippy. So I would counter that one, because we're just here to get swole. Swole is the goal, size is the prize. It doesn't matter if my family despises me, if I'm obsessive to the point that it's all I can think of, that it's encompassing. And should I experience even a modicum of defeat or a setback, I'll absolutely crumble because my confidence is built on a house of cards. With that being said, I would say that I would put forth that being hardcore is not necessarily synonymous with, not to say optimal progress, making the most out of any situation. That sometimes you could almost take the path of most resistance to try and get to a goal, as opposed to the path of least resistance. And I would think if you wanted to do anything in life, you would want to shorten the length of time between what your goal is and you achieving it. And some of these hardcore practices can often needlessly complicated. It's almost like a burden you want to bear. As you said, you spoke a little bit of masochism, that, to be honest, both of us, we started out, we're extremely passionate about lifting. There could be some of those tendencies because you're looking for those signposts along the way, and you're thinking to yourself perhaps that, well, if I'm willing to do this and other people aren't, so as we joke, like getting up either early, or you made the joke about, remember the protein shake that one time where it's like, I'm just, I threw it up, I'm going to drink it right back, because why wouldn't I? That's
I don't know what you're talking about.
You're like, that is not a true story at all.
That's disgusting, and that never happened.
Who would do that? But just the things that we do that we think are pushing the needle forward, it almost serves more to appease the ego of the identity that we see ourselves as, where it's like, I am Mr. Hardcore, and that's how I want to be seen. I might not even be I might not, when I say want to be successful to the extent, and I might be fearful truly of achieving what I want to set out, but I want to prove to myself that, yeah, I'm the man.
I really like that you said the word fearful, because I was reflecting, and I think there are really subtle differences in the way this can be helpful. Like I really do attribute a lot of my early gains and my progress to having the kind of mentality we're talking about, to being the guy who allegedly, yacked his protein shake into a bowl, and then did what he needed to do afterwards. We're not going to go into details. You can find that YouTube video on Omar's channel if you want. But yeah, I had exactly that. I had an identity of being a bodybuilder, of being a powerlifter, of being hardcore. And there was a point in my life that lasted a few years where I thought, for every decision, is this going to aid or hinder my bodybuilding or my lifting goals in general? And I think that was helpful in some ways, but also that's a very strange rubric to apply to like every single thing that happens. And I think it leads to very short-sighted thinking. And not only I think, for me, it led to very short-sighted thinking. But I think the reason why I like that you said the word fearful is I think the mentality expresses itself differently depending on what fuels it. If it's fueled by passion rather than fear, it looks differently. And I think if we're honest, a lot of us who got into this lifting at the start, the idea of being hardcore, of adopting a new identity, of becoming something different and embracing the pushing yourself to your limits, there's so much positive there. It builds self-efficacy. It actually spurs you on to making progress. That's energy that can be channeled into something extremely positive. And I think that's something that a lot of lifters bond over. Those leg workouts that I did, like, man, they changed me. I was a lazy kid in high school, and here I am yakking in the bathroom because I pushed myself so hard, and wow, I actually think I like that. That's weird, like I'm changing. I'm becoming something more than I was. I'm being forged in the fire, like all the tropes you can think of. They're tropey, but they're not necessarily wrong. And when I think about it, I think, what do I feel? It reminds me of watching a new movie, of playing a new video game. I'm excited when I think about the hardcore mentality framed in a positive way and from a place of passion. It's fun, and I think that's the thread that you want to follow. I think the one that is fearful, like if I don't do these things X, Y, and Z, that is typically, I think that's actually a very distinct and different pathway that can masquerade as the former. And a lot of people will find themselves there, especially when they get into a place where they have a plateau, where they get an injury, things aren't going the way they want. Most commonly in competitors, when they start to really struggle with the process because it changed now from loving to lift to restricting themselves, dieting down, getting really lean, and really exploring the limits of their psychological and physical health in service of competing, and trying to transform that hardcore feeling back from almost this fear-based, neurotic, dealing with the stresses of contest prep towards going back to having that passionate, fun version of hardcore, I think is a really important mental aspect of being a competitive bodybuilder or a competitive powerlifter, or anyone who looks up one day and there is sometimes the threat of asking yourself, why am I doing this? Do I still love this? It doesn't feel like the way it used to. I feel pressure to do this. I feel fear to not succeed, versus an excitement to see how far I can take it and the PRs I'm going to get. So, like I said, they might both have that ripped, muscly physique screaming into the ether, black and white, while they're lifting, as kind of the visual representation of being hardcore. But I think the underlying danger of the more fear-based one, although it looks the same on the surface, is really potentially bad in terms of your journey. And I think people will almost inevitably, if they take it seriously, which is kind of implied with being hardcore, they will experience both. And if they can tell the difference, they will wonder how they can get back to the former.
Eric, well said. I do think there's extreme value in knowing the edges, so your limits, pushing yourself to the limit to know what you're capable of, or when you're called upon to, shift into that extra gear, that you can shift into that gear. But like you've said before, it all depends upon who's driving the bus at what time, where you can't have Mr. Hardcore. It's like, all right, I got to dig deep. I'm deep into prep right now. Things are getting tough. I have so many distractions. I really need to simplify things around me so I can succeed. But is that the person who's, driving the bus every single day, 7 days a week throughout the entire year? Or is it a potential player that you put into the driver's seat when it's necessary? And most importantly, what position are they coming from? As you said, a place of fear, or is it one of passion where it's like, I truly want to be the best? Or sometimes, as we'll notice with some people, I will cite another movie reference real quick, but The Wrestler, Aronofsky's film, fantastic film, where he decides to basically sabotage himself at a certain point where he tries to adjust to a normal existence, this guy who is previously famous, and he decides to harm himself actually in the end so he can avoid being regular, and he gives himself no choice but to go back to his old ways of being a pseudo celebrity because he enjoyed the personality that he had. So it's limiting your options to the point that not only will you maybe not succeed, but you're actually hampering yourself long term. And one of the things I want to talk about, not quite the hardcore mentality, because I do want to shift gears, no pun intended, what we're talking about before, but you're discussing something that was fascinating before we started the podcast, getting into the research, talking about making the best possible choices. So it's almost the way I think about it. Eric, my dude, you're a gamer. This is actually, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know, because I know you said 2017 after your PhD, you picked up some video games. Have you ever played a roguelike since then, like 2017 and to now? Have you tried the genre roguelike before I go on, or no?
I have not.
Okay, so super quick before you lay the science hammer down, a roguelike is essentially a game that there's multiple iterations. So every single time it's a new iteration of the given variable. So the environment changes, your equipment changes, all those things that you change all the variables. And your goal is to maximize your good choices that you make along the way to give you the highest likelihood of success. So you might not make it on the first run, but you learn. So you're getting data, you're getting feedback based upon the environment, the enemies, all the things you need to prepare. Every single iteration has enough new variables where you're putting your best possible of all worlds forward. So you have to make the best choices given the limited, so the knowledge asymmetry that exists where you don't quite know everything, but you know kind of enough, and you slowly get better over time. So you adjust, so you're getting that feedback. In that way, talking about having the best of all situations moving forward, one would think if you're taking a look at a dedicated group of people, like powerlifters, powerlifters care about getting strong. They care about increasing their total. And you would think on the surface that they're doing everything as a large group of individuals to push the needle forward, listening to these podcasts, taking a look into programming, maybe hiring a coach. But there's something downright fascinating that you broke down, that when it comes to the research, participants that participate in researches, they experience a lot faster progress than the average lifter outside of research. And if you could just break that down, exactly what we're talking about right here, and how it's almost like the thing that should not be, where it's like, wait a second, you're making a lot more progress when you're in this, isolated environment. What's the difference here?
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you brought that up. So I think I talked about the witch's brew that led to my mentality and the way I look at it. Because I am, honestly, I'm pretty hardcore by some of the definitions of how I prioritize lifting, how much energy and time I put into it, how I structure my life, that I really haven't missed a planned workout except for injury or illness, or like a gym being closed that I didn't expect. And I've literally gone to the park and done pull-ups and things like that when gyms have been closed, etc. So I think from that perspective, I'm pretty hardcore. I mean, most competitive lifters and bodybuilders are, but I'm definitely not I'm not the poster boy for hardcore, and I think where there's often a disconnect between tribes of lifters, like we think about some of the drama that goes on YouTube, it is you're overcomplicating it with the science, you just need to work hard, all you guys are, paralyzed by your analysis, you're not training hard enough. And really, you're stressing over all these details, but you're actually just really afraid to work hard. But I think there's also a huge sector of people who are trying to turn over every possible stone and optimize everything. And of course, they're going to pay attention to science because it can tell them things that they can have a little more confidence in. And when they find something solid or that they believe is solid, they put a lot of effort into it. So a lot of the people who I interact with and I think who resonate with my content um, are people who have that strain. They are intellectually interested in science to make hardcore gains, you know?
Yeah.
And I think the problem with, not that it's a problem, but I say a commonality, a common pitfall that people experience with that mentality, and I fully include myself here, is that because science is reductionist by nature, quantitative research, it looks at a single variable. Often we lose an element of a holistic approach to being optimal in pursuing these reductionist pathways. And when I say holistic, I don't mean like organic food, like the naturalistic fallacy trope. I mean thinking about the big picture, playing chess and not checkers, thinking about second and third order effects, thinking about, okay, I'm going to follow this training program that requires me to train 1 extra day per week. How does it impact my job schedule, my stress levels, my sleep, my family life, and how is that going to come back and affect my career as a lifter? I think a lot of people, they look at everything in isolation, in a vacuum, and they kind of make a Frankenstein piece together of all these things, and they end up making the whole less than the sum of its parts and actually suboptimal because of that kind of flavor of quote unquote science-based hardcoreness. And I've become a voice against going down that rabbit hole and making that pitfall for the past 8 years or so, since that kind of became something I was aware of in myself. So anyway, to answer your question, a really interesting thing is that in studies, and I give 100% credit to Greg Nuckols. I believe I am playing a little bit of telephone here as I report this, but I recently had a meeting with him and some other folks who were doing an academic collaboration on, and he brought up that he has looked at a lot of the trends in the data to see what is normal, what is not normal, and looking at certain aberrant findings in the literature and doing the in-house meta-analyses he's done, and a lot of the work we've done in mass and in his master's degree, being aware of what are normal trends in the data is really interesting. So part of this research project is looking at the rate of progress across all powerlifters. And for those who aren't aware, like you can go to Open Powerlifting, which is a great open access database, and there's literally thousands of lifters who've recorded their numbers in there. So you can look at how quickly do people's totals improve over time. And the average rate of gain, when you look at research studies on resistance training, if you look at changes in strength, is 1.5 to 2 times as fast as the rate of gain in powerlifters. Now, Greg put it as this is kind of spooky, and my immediate reaction was that doesn't surprise me at all, because one of the things that I started to look into as I dove down the rabbit hole and the philosophy of autoregulation for resistance training was the concept of the biopsychosocial model of how this more top-down approach of X's and O's and programming, kind of in a vacuum, like I said, irrespective of other things, and kind of divorcing psychology from the process and really just focusing on the training external load variables. It does ignore how much variation, how much of an influence, and how much of a magnitude of effect everything else that isn't encapsulated in those quantitative measurements can have. So one example is that there has been research done where you show lifters or athletes different movies or film clips, either inspirational or sad before training, and it has notable and significant impacts on actual outcomes in terms of the way they train, like how many reps they get, the load they use, the speed they perform at, etc. So this is a finding that you can find actually a lot of data on from a lot of different angles. And what I think is going on in these studies is not that the research environment is perfect and everything is optimized and all that stuff, although it is very structured, and sometimes they will do things like do a food log with you, encourage you to eat the same food, for the same, eat similarly throughout the study, connect you with a dietitian, give you protein post-workout, and give you a great training environment. I think that, and give you a great training environment, which is often like an afterthought for most people, is the primary thing. Because what's happening is you're coming in and you've got research assistants, a lab, an environment, everything geared towards you having maximal effort within the constraints of whatever that study is. And I think that is undervalued. So I think each and every time we see one of these studies where people make great gains, whether they're trained lifters or not, which is very common. And like I said, it's more than the rate of gains we see in lifters who are competing and getting stronger and highly dedicated. I think what we're seeing here is just the environmental benefits on top of whatever's going on in the study, and that has a much larger impact than we realize. So to give some kudos to the bro, quit overthinking it and just train hard, they're not wrong, that being able to maintain that passionate, hardcore mentality might have a larger impact than doing a lot of other things, quote unquote, right from a more reductionist standpoint and nailing the X's and O's in the kitchen and in training. If you can capture that pumping iron feel on a regular basis, if you can bring it, the right combination of music, workout partners, gym culture, as we talked about in our last episode, motivation, and having a fun-loving, passionate purpose to what you're doing, I think probably will have a larger net effect than many other factors that we've spent, multiple hours talking about here on Iron Culture, if I'm to be 100% honest.
Eric, when Greg says something spooky, it should have the hair on the back of your neck stand up, because I think we're all united in terms of trying to present information that once again will push the needle forward. How can I improve you? And I think both of us, because we come from a coaching background, we care about getting the lifter better. So what can we do in order to make the lifter stronger? And what is the likelihood of them achieving it? Because you want it to be predictable. You want it to be something that can happen. It could be repeatable. It's something that once you collectively work out a plan together, it's going to help them arrive at their destination. And I think what you just outlined right there about the environment, the difference between someone maybe on YouTube saying, yeah, you need to be more hardcore, like you're overcomplicated, just train hard. I would say that being hardcore almost can be a compensatory mechanism for not checking off the essentials. And what I mean when I say that, it's like, yeah, I didn't get any sleep, but I still got after the gym. And like, yeah, the warm-ups felt terrible, but, I still did my top single and I thought it felt heavy at, 400 pounds, but I said, F it, and I went to 420 because that's what I do. It's like, and that's good. That's good that you're able to kick in an overdrive. It's like, but my dude, if instead you shut off, Pornhub or whatever, went to bed 2 hours prior, maybe read before, got a good night's sleep, you wouldn't have to overcompensate with that mentality, which actually does drain you long term. Because if every single workout is a grind, and almost when we talk about, Eric, not that passion play where you're excited, like you want to excel, it's almost like you want to show yourself off, where it's like, hey, I'm at the gym, I feel good, I have that almost slight euphoria because, my homies are over there. I got my music playing. You said that about research studies. They're not saying like, hey, you're a wuss. Are you going to get after this? It's like, when you go there, that they're setting everything up, that guess what? You're not on your phone. You don't have the opportunity to distract yourself. And almost, I would think, Eric, that it takes some of the pressure off of yourself that then can cripple some individuals, where it's like, I'm doing a study, not that I don't want to disappoint those conducting the study, but it almost removes you from yourself. So it's like, well, no, you have to do this. Okay, it's like, there's something wonderful, elegant, simplistic about a coach telling you what to do, you having belief in the program and just getting after it, rather than you either needlessly complicating it or overcompensating because you didn't do your basic homework. So it's, the idea of, are you eating? Are you sleeping enough? Like, what's your total caffeine intake? So like, what's your sleep quality like? Or even, I told you, and this is no exaggeration, man, when we had that conversation, we're just like talking with each other, and you shared personally what had improved yourself about, just, putting the phone on airplane mode, because we're both not, got to work all the time, but you're checking it. Yeah, you have these multiple mood swings, like, oh, I got this deadline now, I need to do 90 minutes. Do you think that's going to positively affect your workout or negatively affect it? And that had a bigger impact than me pontificating whether or not I needed to add a third day of doing squat singles, and like in a very absolute sense. And so sometimes there's been individuals, so Eric, you'll love this, some musicians, so there's two, Lenny Bro and also Jeff Beck, two guitarists have said this. It's like, wow, you play like these flashy melodic things, they sound so good. And like, how do you do it? Like, it seems so complicated. It's like, my goal actually is to make things as simple as possible. Like, it might sound complicated to you, but I'm not trying to furiously play this thing to show off to you. In fact, when I'm trying to model it and structure it and I'm thinking about finger positions, I'm thinking about what's the easiest way to execute this thing, as opposed to the opposite, which is almost like peacocking. It's like, hey bro, look how hardcore I am. And it almost, I think, being hardcore can be an external signal to others and then internally to yourself of a perceived level of effort that you almost need to convince yourself. And I have a question for you. I actually want to, talking about the research man or talking from a coaching perspective, I want to get your perspective on the concept of ability PRs, which I know you've spoken about before, or let's say absolute PRs, where I would just share. So I'm going to give personal anecdotes, and then I want to hear your thoughts on this, Eric. Would be that before, one of my mentality shifts, I almost would need to earn the right, I'd feel in my head, to try and go for a PR where the signpost along the way, okay, I want to hit a new 1 rep max. So here's I would say almost a quasi-hardcore mentality. I need to prove to myself that I'm worthy of attempting a PR, that I have the capability, because there's almost that lingering doubt because you're approaching a previously, unattainable position. You're trying to view a new horizon. Do I have this? And so you need to convince yourself, new 3-rep max. So you want to hit a new 1 rep max? Well, hit a new 5-rep max. Hit this. Hit something to give a good indicator that, yeah, man, you're on the way. And unfortunately, for myself, I could say when you do a high frequency, I seem to respond well to that, a moderate or higher volume approach, there's a sort of accumulated fatigue that happens over the weeks where you need to constantly give yourself check marks like, yeah, dog, you're doing, new 5-rep max, that is draining you, as opposed to perhaps something like an ability PR where you're hitting the same weight at a lower RPE. Or it could be a technical mastery where, you know what, it was just seamless. I picked it up. It was a similar RPE, but when I did 600 this time, it felt like a one-piece pickup. I didn't have to get a certain level of arousal. There's certain PRs, ability PRs, outside of the absolute weight being lifted, and you save it in the tank for game day. And that took a dramatic shift for me, almost convincing myself that it's okay not to, have that signpost of, yeah, you did the absolute PR. No, you got this, because I think those absolute PRs are compensation for the doubt that you might have within yourself, within the programming, within your capabilities on that day. Just as a small example.
That's a great example. I think as you get further and further into your journey, the more outcome-based focused hardcore drive becomes more and more incongruent with the realities of you improving. When you can add 5 pounds to the bar every time you do a movement again, you can go for that thing, scare yourself, and succeed, because your strength is going up that quickly. And I think there's nothing wrong with that early on, because it is just giving you a win over and over and over again. It builds that self-efficacy. Yeah. And I think that's why so many early stage intermediates, late stage novices feel like the rug was pulled from underneath them, and they program hop when they get to that point where inevitably the rate of progress slows down, because the same mentality that previously served them is now one of their greatest enemies. Yeah. Now you do have to find a way to forge forth and make progress in the face of it being harder to make progress. And that means you have to reframe things. And just the rigid mentality of going hard, I did that for 2 years. Alberto and I used to call this cavemaning it. And those were a 2-year period where I didn't get stronger, and I did get hurt, and I got frustrated. And I didn't know what variables to manipulate, because previously my mentality was just a mentality. It wasn't one of learning and trying new things. And it was okay. I had a really steep slope to my initial progress. I went from, like 170 to 195 at a similar body composition in my first year. My squat got up to just under 405. My deadlift got to just under 500, and my bench got to right around 3 plates. I got to, especially we're talking like mid 2000s, where there wasn't a whole lot of gym exposure or my knowledge really of how mediocre those numbers really are. But I very quickly was the strong guy at the gym, and someone who'd made a lot of gains. And as a trainer, it really fed my ego. And I don't think that motivated me to really try and think about it. And as I also found that I fell in love with the process of learning about it, and I plateaued, and I had to think about how to keep making progress, that's when I had to start reframing things. So yeah, the concept of an ability PR or a process-oriented PR, I think is really kind of like charging up so that you can make that progress. My colleague, Dr. Mike Zerdos, sometimes says that it's the hard thing to do is hold yourself back until you earn the right to go for something like that. If you've spent the first couple years with the hardcore passionate mentality, hitting those PRs on a regular basis and knowing that basically training all in balls to the wall has resulted in this kind of progress, it's a habit, it's a mentality, it is something that is hard to break, to not keep doing, to think, I need to hold myself back, build some momentum, accumulate volume, accumulate some fatigue, see my performance get more variable, trust in the process, which is always a scary thing to do, which is why you normally tell someone to trust in the process because they're not currently doing it. And then I'm going to try to do something that is a confidence builder, but not necessarily an objective. I've absolutely made it. Because we know the devastation of when you have put in a lot of work and you just go for it outright and you miss. And I think that can start eroding that self-efficacy. So some of it is kind of this, kind of self-authorship. I'm going to program myself. How do I protect my enjoyment, my passion, my hardcoreness, my ego, while still pushing forward? And it becomes a slightly more complicated psychological calculus when you're at a point where making progress is harder. And I think the uninformed person would just be like, well, look, bro, you need to suck it up and face reality. Like, whatever you're doing, you're not making progress. You need to change it. And they would also say, like, you playing these mental gymnastics, convince yourself you're not making progress. Convince yourself you're making progress when you're not really. It's not helping the problem either. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you can only make a certain amount of progress in a given unit of time, you need to set up a new mentality which supports that. And it doesn't look the same as being entirely outcome focused, numbers driven on a week to week basis, which is, I would say, that the dominant way that this plays out in the strength community and to some degree in the bodybuilding community. And it's normally just like a body weight change. And we see what those result in: stagnation over the course of years, or that the dreamer bulk, which you get made fun of for because you just put on a whole bunch of weight. And neither one is actual progress. That is an easy pathway towards convincing yourself you've made progress that actually is counterproductive, if anything. A bodybuilder being 60 pounds over stage weight, not a good thing. A power lifter who is constantly hurt because they've been pushing it balls to the wall every single session, not a good thing. And you're not learning in either case. You are really just fooling yourself and covering up the gaps with this hardcore mentality. So I think 100% starting to focus more on the process rather than the outcome, and making all these little chinks in your armor buffed out, rock solid, shiny, and more resilient is what then leads you to have the opportunity to take that shot and have a high probability of being successful. So I think that is that's what maturity as a lifter comes from, and it doesn't mean letting go of that hardcore mentality. Omar, you talked about, and I'm going to kick it over to you in a second, how sometimes the posts we see on social media, or I would say something that doesn't require social media at all, the self-talk that we have about the kind of maybe even like either negative or positive, like, bro, come on, man, you got this. Don't be a bitch. Like I've said that stuff like that to myself, or I've been more encouraging, you got this. Some of that is reaffirming of an identity, because part of me is scared. Part of me is down and out. Part of me is feeling like I'm not making progress. Part of me is remembering the last time I missed a weight, or the last time I got hurt, or being plateaued. So reaffirming to myself that I'm a warrior, I'm a soldier, all the tropes you can think of, there is value in that. Of course, it's cringeworthy on social media, and of course, I think it's funny to look back on some of the stuff I posted and how my nickname was the Relentless Warrior, and all the tropey BS, and how I didn't even ironically take pictures like the one behind me before. They were just what I thought was cool. I think there's value in it still. Mm-hmm. Reaffirming to yourself that I am still someone who can push myself to the limit, that I have that card in my pocket, I've still got my hardcore member card, is a really good thing, because you will need it at times. And that is deeply attached to your sense of self-efficacy. So yeah, you still want to keep that. And I'm not suggesting that to start making these abilities PRs, it's a sacrifice and a loss of who you were, but it is definitely a reframing.
So many damn nuggets, Eric. I think for a lot of individuals listening to this, oftentimes it could almost be about not letting yourself get in the way of yourself, where you're almost superimposing yourself in places was like, if you actually remove all this pressure, or you shift the focus, or you actually take a look at, once again, what will push the needle forward, you will find that it's a little bit different than what you're doing. And I think, Eric, for myself, one of my quirks, one of my pet peeves, I hate wasting time on anything. So I hate investing a certain amount of time and feeling I'm not getting the return. Not in the sense that, oh, like for both of us, we've been training a long period of time. No matter what the PRs come for us, they're going to be small, right? Like if either of us add in an absolute sense 10 pounds or 5 kilos on a major lift, that's a big win, right? So I'm not at all saying that part of the journey is not worth it, where the time investment a whole year for 10 pounds. It's that if I'm doing something and it's not giving the return, and I still believe and know that it is possible to make a little bit more progress, I'm doing something wrong that needs that re-examination. And I think sometimes that's when we assert ourselves into the frame, into the picture frame, so to speak. It's like, actually just sit back, man. It's like, let's take a look at this. Like, what can you actually do? Talking about, as an example, Eric, there's a reason why. So I'll share this. I thought often that when I would travel, I suddenly weights start feeling lighter. And it's true, Eric, that at Fortis Fitness, the metal plates, if you were to weigh them, are on average a little heavy. Like, they are heavy. So they're, let's say 40. I weighed out, I think 30 one time 6 years ago, and it averaged out to like 45.8 pounds. So cool. So you go 4 plates, that's a couple extra pounds. So that is in an absolute sense more weight. But when we would train, or when I go down and I train with Alan or I train with Mike, and you start stop removing some of that pressure on yourself. It's, well, okay, so I know this weight's going to be big. It's like you just see that guy down the street, or you see that guy right next to you, he's squatting 6 plates, or it's a given, or you almost have, sometimes you don't have enough time to get in your own head, and you have nothing to do other than to perform. That's where the magic happens. And I actually think, anecdotally, before we get into the social media and like what people write up and how it's indicative of the way they think their internal process, where it's like, okay, it's a powerlifting meet, which means that we're going to have, Instagram has like a 300 word limit. We're going to have 300 words of excuses of how it didn't go according because of A, B, C, rather than celebrating maybe some of the positives you did. But I think, I'm not sure if you'd agree with this, Eric, but as a coach, anecdotally, I've experienced this numerous times, because there's so many psychological hangups and potential, deeply rooted issues when someone's trying to do a body composition change, and they're solely focused on that. I feel I don't like the way I look. I want to change it. They're very outcome focused. They're very focused on the external, how they look, right? And often with those individuals that have had a historical experience of failing to achieve the physique they want, when they shift almost the goal a little bit, it's like, hey, let's go a little more performance oriented. So like, we want to make some strength goals for you. Like, what's your best squat? Okay, let's try and do this. Let's focus on these things. Maybe you pepper in a little bit of habit. So the way you frame food, as an example, is not food's what's going to get me to my physique goal because I want to become more desirable, because I actually have some hangups on the way that I look and I don't like the way I look. It's a fear-based approach. It's like, you need to start eating some of this food. You need to make sure, to a client, I'm sure we've said this before, you need to make sure you're getting adequate protein, because you're actually doing some pretty intense training now. You're trying to get a little bit stronger. So protein, view it almost like a fuel that you're consuming, so that when you get to the gym, you can perform better. And sure, them consuming more protein might lead to greater satiety, so they feel more full. But that's not what you're explaining to them. And so the way it almost removes pressure, where they get out of the way of themselves. And so sometimes that whole idea of being hardcore or talking a certain way, it's not the best self-talk that you can have. And I'm not saying positive affirmations all day, but it's like, what can I actually do at the end of the day that will be more helpful than harmful to myself? And sometimes some of our old habits, Eric, as we know, it's like we're down and out, like this is it. We got to perform. That's a good feeling. And I think we've joked, and I've joked about this online just before we talk about the idea about the coaching individuals and how a shift in mindset, we said reframing can be so powerful. But we've both experienced this, where sometimes you hit a PR and you're looking for that struggle. You want to get that sword, you want to slay the dragon, so to speak, but you're actually almost a little disappointed by how easy the PR was, because you were expecting a battle. Because part of what you do, you have to feel like, once again, you earn it. Oh, Eric, I'm going for a new overhead press PR or whatever. Like let's say you and I, we do the log press. I'm expecting some resistance here, man. Like when I go up to try and do this new PR, it should feel like a heroic struggle, and almost that part of the identity where it's an emptiness that you temporarily feel, where you thought you're going to be called into action. Hey, I'm being sent to the front line, and it doesn't happen. Is interesting because it's like, aren't you after progress? Like that's 10 pound. That's a 10-pound PR. Like you're better than you've ever been now. You've shown objectively that's more weight you've ever lifted. But then there's that lingering feeling in your head, like, but it wasn't hard. Like there's part of me that wanted the battle a little bit, and that's interesting.
It is very interesting. I think the psychology behind all this is intriguing. I think some of the, like, what is going on in these studies, what is going on with these rapid rates of gains that we see, and I think a lot of it is the ability to offload a lot of doubt and to have it be in the hands of someone else. Like, all right, for these 8 weeks, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All I have to show up is I'd have to show up, put in effort, and follow some guidance here. And I think the people who are good at coaching themselves are able to recreate that through reframing things in their own head. And the people who really benefit from coaches are those who really struggle with that. And, they make these plans for themselves, and baked in is their fear and doubts. And it's easy to step away from it because there was no, solidarity in the start that comes from when you work with someone you trust and who you're, paying to invest in you and share an experience with, who ostensibly is someone who you think has some knowledge, skills, and experience that you would benefit from, and there's a level of trust with them that you don't have with yourself. Talking about social media and kind of the distinction that I started with at the beginning of how do you tell the difference between the right kind or the wrong kind of hardcore. You talked about fear, and I think fear is a huge discriminator. And I think that classic Dune, fear is the mind killer. I 100% think that, I 100% think that fear lends people towards reductionist thinking. And we actually know that extreme emotional responses do overwhelm some of our cognitive processes. It's much more harder to be a complex thinker who thinks of second and third order effects when you're having extreme emotional response, and that's something that's taken advantage of by politicians, marketers, etc. Social media, that's the game, right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when we're talking about the hardcore kind of bodybuilding, powerlifting culture, I think fear often doesn't present as fear. It presents as anger, And some people would go, well, fear is not the same thing as anger. Like it's, the best way to piss somebody off who's, someone who's like angry, confident, like self-righteous, and like talks about all the problems with the world and how they just don't suck it up enough and all that. Like the kind of the ideologue example that you can think of. Anyone who is brimming with outrage and self-righteous indignation, to tell them you're actually afraid of something is a great way just to make them even more angry. But I mean, honestly, just think about it for more than 2 seconds. Like, what is anger? It's a response to something that you think should not be in the world, right? And it's the emotion that leads towards action. That's why there's fight or flight. They're not like completely divorced. The anger response is when there's things that aren't right in the world that you want to change. But if you really think about it, the thing you're angry at, how would you feel if it just kept happening and you had no ability to change it, and that became the world? If that's, God, I mean, just think of the things that really make you angry, like pedophiles or like genocide. Like, if that became the world, that is scary as hell, And that's really what motivates us to anger, is things that we are afraid of, things that we want to see change, things we don't want to be real. Anger motivates us to do something about it. That's not always bad, but it often is, because anger also blinds us. That's what we see in mob mentalities. That's what we see in all these kind of elements of our culture that I don't need to point out, that have been very prevalent in recent times. That happens at an individual level, in my opinion. I think when you see someone who treats their life like they're fighting a war, who sees it all about, I'm in a struggle, It's me against the world. I am, getting ready to go to the Iron Temple to engage in warfare with the weights. Like, I do think that person is. I mean, and honestly, I'm not saying that I'm not trying to talk down on this person, but if they do experience a lot of internal doubt and fear, that is a method of mobilizing themselves against it. If you think about it, if that's what anger is, many times. So you have to think like, what is at the root of this person who is daily going to war in the gym? It's probably not the right kind of hardcore. And I think there's a really interesting alternative to that, where you see the people who get hyped up to lift. They get so motivated. They clearly love lifting, and I would say they're passionate about it. It sometimes can look like anger. But then how do they post? How do they talk about it? They love lifting. It's brought them great things. They have nothing else to say. Sometimes people think they're humble, and there's a stark contrast to while they both bring that hardcore intensity when it's game time, they have a very different flavor on social media. One seems like they're a talking head on a polarized news channel who hates all the ills and the wrongs in the world, and if everyone would just be a badass powerlifter like them, then all the health problems in the world would be solved. That person is probably on the wrong type of hardcore passion, I would say. That's fear motivated, anger driven, reductionist kind of loss of the ability to have, the cognitive intelligent thought process. While the other person who is, really doesn't seem to bring that same intensity to the iron that they have to their social media posts and the way they interact with the world, but seems to be a little more calm, reserved, well thought, or at least has more depth to their personality than just being the constant warrior. They are probably doing it for the right reasons, or at least I would say less reasons that aren't built on fear or a sense of inadequacy or trying to rail against those things. And it's not like you just get to choose. Like, people who have these internal struggles aren't just like, oh, maybe I just shouldn't be insecure. Like, that's obviously not something you could snap your fingers. But I do think that's a really useful litmus test when you apply it to yourself. If you find yourself in this place where you're always angry, I know I'll speak for myself. When I'm going through phases of my life where I'm angry a lot, there's something much deeper going on. There's something I am trying to mobilize myself against. And something isn't right in the world, or isn't right with me, or isn't right with my people, or something like that. And it is blinding. It does make you act in ways you wish you hadn't or that you regret. And it does, especially when applied to nutrition and training, it can lead towards things that are unfortunate, like an eating disorder or an injury. So I think it's important.
Eric, episodes like these are some of my favorites. Like I said, these aren't my children. I don't have to pretend I love them all. I do genuinely enjoy participating in all of them. But when we really uncover some of what I'd call the essential truths, there is hope, though, as you said, because I think we come from very similar backgrounds or where we started with our lifting. You can evolve past some typical reactions that you would have, just as a small little example, like, man, when you said pedophiles, genocide, and I was getting angry when you said that. It's like, it's a place of fear of thinking, what if the world was just that? And then I thought to myself, Eric, what if we had a genocide against pedophiles and everything got better? See, you come up with a solution to a problem and then you just bulldoze right past it. I do think you and myself, this podcast in general, it's a little subversive. And what I mean when I say that is that sometimes social media figures can almost be avatars of affirmations of things that people want to hear, tropes, right? So bodybuilding, it's superficially, before you participate in any culture, you think you have some modicum of understanding. Okay, the bodybuilder, what does it mean? Like, this is what it means to be a bodybuilder. And then you actually do the damn thing, talk to those that are experienced, and it's like, but that's not it at all. And so sometimes you might be self-selecting where you want to hear certain voices or you want to hear certain noises. And part of our job, one of our functions, I think, is a re-examination of ourselves, of everything we've done, and then once again a shortening of the path. So it's like, hey, here are some mistakes, here is some utility in some of the things that we did, here are some things that we can learn from, here are some things we're still learning of, and then show once again a way of making it a little easier for those listening to achieve. And I do want to give something tangible, because we're talking about an individual operating out of anger or a reactionary either position where there's a certain level level of introspection, I think, a certain level of being analytical that I wouldn't say is a prerequisite for an exceptional lifter, but we now see, thanks to social media, thanks to the USAPL and the IPF, a wide diversity of the type of lifter also succeeding. So we're not trying to imply at all like this is the one way. Like if you're motivated purely by anger and somehow, for you maybe burning that gas at a high intensity, it's gotten you to where you've been and you've achieved a certain level of success. We're not trying to imply at all like, oh, you're doing it all wrong. That might be the fuel right now that is fueling the fire that is allowing you to succeed. I would say it seems to me that those that stick around the longest, they kind of get to a deeper root of passion that allows them to succeed on a regular basis rather than, as you said, Eric, some of those short-term selections that might end up burning yourself up because you're putting all this extra mental pressure that might be helping you in this one manner that you're finding yourself becoming motivated, but there might be other pathways that you're then ignoring. And one of those, when we talk about hardcore, like this dissecting of essentially what it means to be a competent lifter, would be what you've spoken about for a long period of time, something that I would say, again, superficially, man, I don't need to do this shit. But then once I did, I was like, oh, word? Would be something like dietary breaks, where it's, wait a second here, man. Let's just pause and let's try and analyze this. So I got a goal. I want to lose weight. Eric, what's the easiest way to lose weight? A calorie deficit and be consistent. So if we are simply machines that are here to follow orders, and the best, once again, scenario would be to be in a consistent caloric deficit, don't get out of that deficit, you'll continue to lose weight every single week. So if you want to lose weight in the shortest period of time, just keeping that calorie deficit. And then someone says from being a coach, and they notice once again, let's say, sure, you put 100 people on this plan to lose weight over 12 weeks, and about 70% of them succeed. But 30%, for some reason, aren't able to adhere to that plan. Are they weak-willed? Is it simply a function of them not being, once again, hardcore enough? Or are you trying to come up with a coherent plan that's all-encompassing for every single individual that allows them to actually get to their goal? And sometimes you might think that you have the mental toughness, but again, it's not a question of having that mental toughness. It's about easing the process. And what I mean, when I tried, so I consulted you, man, you reminded me, that's actually 2019 now. So we're going on a year and a half where I thought I had to shift gears because guess what? And I spoke about this actually in the last episode with Mike and Jim, that I was doing a high volume approach. I spoke with you about this, Eric. Things were going well. Hit a little squat PR. Things were going great. But I was pushing myself so much that things started breaking down. Right, I was going into the old habits, what had worked historically for myself, but clearly with the amount of, let's just say, life stress, the biopsychosocial model, it ended up not working out. So I spoke with you. I saw you in person in July. I'm like, man, my dude's looking great. Yeah, why not lean down? Hashed out a plan, and one of the things agreed upon was, let's implement diet breaks. I typically and historically didn't have any problems adhering to a diet. I was actually Mr. rock solid. You give me the plan, Eric. I'm not going to let you down. Not going to let myself down. Let's get after this. Cool. But I implemented diet breaks when I wouldn't have done it before. And lo and behold, even little things, not to get too explicit, but remember I spoke with you about this, things like when I begin losing weight, I could get a little, how do you say, backed up, let's just say. I can, it could be a little hard.
You can't poop.
I can't poop. And so when I took a diet break, the mental reprieve was great. The lifting felt very good, which was fun. So I was able to train at a high intensity. But even other, as you say, second, third order effects where it's like, oh, wait a second, this is something that I wouldn't think about from a composition standpoint, but from just an ease of everyday life, made a dramatic difference, right? And so sure, let's compare it, Eric. I did 14, because maybe I took 2 1-week or 3 1-week breaks. Maybe it was 15 weeks as opposed to 12 weeks straight. But I arrived, and the ease at arrival, I didn't have to dig into that extra gear. And that it was a revelation to me. Wait a second, I'm leaning out right now, and it's not as hard as I thought it'd be. It almost felt like a cheat code. That's how I described it to you. And sometimes you could think that you don't need something, or you don't see the utility because you think, once again, you could just strong arm it. Yeah, but I'll just muscle through it, man. I won't focus. and you think you might be capable, and you very well might, but down the road, you might not be aware of how it might manifest itself. So yeah, you did a prep. You prep for a bodybuilding show, and you're able to do successfully, and you went all the way through. But now you're starting to think about food, and you're thinking that you're just weak for thinking about food instead, because you're not addressing some of these things, some of these, as you say, chinks in the armor that developed along the way. So I think, Eric, for yourself, what you did with both the research and as a coach, talking from a very tangible way, because people maybe want things that are tangible. Something like the efficacy of diet breaks, man, that's a game changer, potentially for some people.
Yeah, I think if we want to get into practical nuggets, first off, I loved everything you just said. It was great. To give people some really practical takeaways, I think the reframe, the way you go, like, what should I be doing? What is the mentality I should take that will result in actions that will tangibly improve my outcomes, is how do I make this permanent? And I think, like, for example, if you were dieting down to a sustainable body composition, in your case, Omar, and how did you make it permanent, is you reframed it and you made it easier so that you could actually put mental energy into intentionality during the diet break. So you understood, like, oh, this is how I live in this body comp. This is what my life, this is what breakfast looks like. This is what my activity levels look like. And then those habits, because the definition of a habit is something you don't have to think about. There is no visible difference to an outsider of someone who has a bunch of habits and someone who is intentionally going through a process that they have, learned from a book or a coach or whatever. Like, oh, I track my macros, I eat this, I eat at these meal times, I hit the gym at this time, versus the other person who just does those things. And that means that energy that the former person, who it's not a habit for, if all the energy they're putting into following those same outputs that you see when you see the person who does them as habits, the person who's doing them as habits can now direct that energy somewhere else. So that means while they're accomplishing the same goals, maybe even at the same pace, that person who has them habituated is now leveling up in other areas. They can be reading about, a book on different training programming, so that, currently they're on a diet break, currently they're doing this thing, great, I'm finishing up this cut. It doesn't take a whole lot of mental energy from me, but I'm also thinking about how do I set up the next pin that I'm going to knock down. That's just one example. And I think this is one of the reasons why certainly this is an interesting anecdote I've seen, that the more times someone competes in bodybuilding, the easier it is to get that same level of leanness that previously crushed them. And they can maintain more muscle mass, and it seems to negatively affect their life less. I think if we were to actually do blood draws, they would still have the same testosterone suppression. They would still see leptin in the toilet. All of the same physiological outcomes, except for maybe the stress response itself, would be very similar. But because they were able to do much of it from that place of habituation, I've walked this ground before, I am capable of doing this, I don't have lingering doubts and fears, that frees me up to then make the right decisions and reactions in the course of any obstacles that may come up. It allows me to be a little more present, maybe for my workouts, but maybe just for the rest of my life, so that I don't get these second order effects. Because, like, if you are driving yourself into the dust to do this show, and you show up at work as a trainer, and I'm going to speak from experience here, and you really have to work hard to turn it on for your clients. And the extra little things that you did for them previously take too much mental energy. So now you're doing the minimum to do your job versus getting a good effect. That may have knock-on consequences later. If you're a trainer who basically makes your money on people actually getting results from you, and then maybe they don't get slightly as good results, they don't re-sign. Now you're making less money. Now you're making less money, and you're stressing over your budget. You're thinking, okay, do we need to carpool this week? Okay, do we need to shop at a different grocery store? Maybe I need to downgrade to a different way. And then that starts triggering your anxiety about doing everything quote unquote optimally for your bodybuilding. And you might not be able to make that connection at that time because you're so mentally stressed. And a second order or a third order effect, I can't play chess right now. I'm in checkers mode. So that's kind of what I'm getting at here, is that I think a lot of us who are in that kind of reductionist, science-based, hardcore, fear-driven mentality, we sometimes poo-poo, or at least we don't have any understanding of the potential effect of losing that holism that I talked about, of losing sight of the big picture. Because I'm dotting all my I's, I'm crossing all my T's, I'm doing everything perfectly, and so what if I'm stressed? Like, what does that do? I can't quantify that, and if I can't measure it, it doesn't exist. It does, and there is something there, and I think It's the kind of thing where, unfortunately, you probably won't know until you've gotten outside of the fog of war and that struggle next time. And I like what you said, Omar, is that we're not. I'll speak for myself here, because you already said what you said. I know I've pointed out how anger comes from fear, and how being in this triggered emotional state is not great for thinking. And it's not just like, ha ha, look at all these hardcore idiots, and I'm so perfect and I've always been that way. I'm speaking from experience. So I remember going through, because like life doesn't stop for bodybuilding, right? I've gone through a prep after my father died, and being angry for like a year and needing to get therapy so that I could figure out a different way to deal with life, and using bodybuilding in, I would say, probably a constructive way, but certainly not a sustainable way. So your relationship with the game is going to change. You will go through phases where fear and anger and crisis are present, and you have to cope with it with the way you lift, or the way your relationship with the iron, or your perspective. And you can build self-efficacy. You can get past it by leveraging that negative energy. Almost, it's almost like it's a toxic fuel. You can run on it, but I knew for me it wasn't sustainable. I had to change my mentality. I had to move on. So it's great that lifting for me can be so many things, but I also know what it can't keep being, or I would burn out, get hurt, or I would start to get resentful, or I would just get so fatigued that it just all felt like too much, which is where I started to get. So yeah, this isn't in no shade being thrown at people who are currently in the midst of the battle of the bulge, or rather, I should say, the battle of the bulges, left and right bicep. But I think it's an exhausting and potentially counterproductive experience to live in a war truly all the time, and to experience not only life, of course, but also lifting and trying to reach your goals through that kind of lens and that life perspective. It's something that, at the very least, I would say, hey, I'm glad it's working for you now. I hope it's net positive for you, but really ask yourself if that's the way it can always be for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years of your lifting career and life.
And I think that's a large chunk of the mentality, Eric, is we're here to be lifting for life. That actually was one of the things we talk about: critiques of capitalism, talk about iron culture, but we're lifers. Okay, we have no choice. We'll be doing some sort of barbell movement or something with resistance training for pretty much our entire life. What was wonderful to see with you, I'd say, in 2019, when we talk about the concept of mastery, it's acquiring all these skills. So it's not that the problem itself gets easier, but you get better at solving it. And so in 2019, where once again, Eric, would you just say quick yes or no that you looked your best on stage in 2019 versus any other year? Is that a fair statement or no?
Yes.
Yeah. So one, my man looked fantastic, but it is the ease with which you arrived, as you told me, compared to previous years, to your best physique ever, where I actually remember, as a small side, it's funny, not naming names at all. So here's my man, Eric. He's prepping for a show. Like, he literally just competed in his show. I can only imagine. It can't be easy, right? It can't be enjoyable where you're Skeletor mode and like all these hormones are yelling at you, but you're like, I'm going to be calm. And he was chill as can be. We did all our podcasts. It didn't disturb him the slightest. We're in this house, and in the morning, this other individual who didn't do any prep whatsoever was getting far more irritable that they didn't have their coffee in the morning, versus Mr. Skeletor, who's like, I could only want, it has to be like a tornado of souls going on in your head, where there's a certain pressure, but you handled it remarkably well. And that, in a way, the leveling up that can occur that we're talking about, just another tangible example, is that you looked your best, and it was easier than previous times. Eric, does that mean you weren't hardcore enough? It's like, no, that is the definition of hardcore. It's kind of doubling down on the requisite skills that are necessary in order to get to the next level in the game. Brian Whitaker, right? Where he spoke about, he wants to be a world champion bodybuilder. And was it like number 3 in his order of importance? He also wanted to be a good family man, right? He wanted to care about his job, about being an economics professor, and make sure that those didn't suffer at the same time of him trying to pursue the glory onto himself. And that's remarkable, once again, where it's like, that's true mastery, where you've leveled up so many skills that you actually feel confident enough to open yourself up to more stressors or more variables. It's almost not that it's an admission of defeat by being hardcore and trying to simplify your life, but it's like, okay, I'm concerned that these other things might interfere with my goal, therefore I have to exclude them. And when you reach a certain level, when you're that master, you're like, hey, bring it on. Hey, it's all right. Like, it's okay. I think I can handle all of it. Whew! That's some confidence right there, Eric.
I think, well, first, thank you. That's very kind. And I'll talk about my journey and experience for a second. But one thing I was thinking about while you're talking about the concept of mastery is I think when you see people who are in that stage, and it's typically earlier in their career of lifting, where they're talking about just the struggle. I think there's novelty there. It's something they're learning about themselves, and that it is something that requires a lot of focus. It takes a large cognitive load for them to overcome that, and therefore they feel the struggle, and they can, pat themselves on the back, and they can also attribute their success to each one of those times where they had to struggle and succeeded. And I think that process is necessary at an early stage, and it does kind of drive that hardcore mentality that we see on social media or on the conversations it dominates in person. But I do think that's indicative of someone in the earlier stages, because mastery means that those things are no longer novel. You've been there before. You may have the same kind of struggles. You may have the same internal talk to some degree, but you know the outcome. You know what's led to success before. You know you've overcome it previously. You know that feeling like shit is actually normal. And I think that's a huge process of what doing multiple preps and getting used to it is that you embrace the suck. And it's a funny thing when you come out of prep, because you start to, oh, this is normal. 2 months later, oh, this is normal. Oh, legs aren't supposed to feel like lead. Oh, I'm not supposed to be tired all day. Oh, I'm not supposed to wake up at 3 a.m. Oh, having a libido is a normal thing for someone my age. Like, I think all of those things that occur, man, I really was irritable. Maybe I don't need to constantly censor myself so I'm not a dick. Maybe just normally I'm not a dick. Like, those are all the things that I realize. And I think when those are new and you don't necessarily know to expect them, they seem like that's all there is, and it takes a lot of cognitive effort to manage it. So to be 100% clear, 2019 was my easiest prep. It was my best physique, and it was the least stress I had to get there. But I also didn't do it perfect, and because I was managing that stress. And I learned a lot from it, and it did affect, certain things at certain times and certain people and certain relationships. But I also, here's an example of not needing to exert as much cognitive effort on some of the day-to-day stuff, allowing you to kind of quote unquote level up like I was talking about. I started a new podcast, and I traveled like 10 times, and I did all these different presentations. And I think what enabled me to do that was in my 2011 prep, I prepped while I was doing my master's degree, teaching 30 hours a week, having a full load of clients, and basically working 60 hours a week while going to school. And preparing for the move to New Zealand. I remember looking back on that and going, that was too much. I'm never going to do that again. And it was objectively more than I did a couple of years ago in 2019, but it was a different kind of stress. I had a lot more interpersonal stress and expectations on me because I was presenting, traveling. We had the 3DMJ 10-year anniversary, collaborating and having guests on the podcast. In 2011, I really wasn't kind of the same. I was really just a coach who was moderately well known in certain circles. I wasn't, a podcast guy or anything like that. So it allowed me to go and confidently, without much fear of it not going well, say, let me see if I can do a prep without it actually disturbing my standard Eric Helms schedule. And it wasn't perfect. And I definitely learned some things, like maybe don't return from the UK to New Zealand, which is a 27-hour total travel time, just 3 days before a show, and also try to stay on the New Zealand schedule by just caffeinating and sleeping during the day and being, present while during your presentations. I had a great time at the EPC 2019. Don't get me wrong, but you learn some things and about the timing of shows and what you would do, and I would do things differently. So I definitely learned from it. But I didn't have the opportunity to tackle those problems. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to tackle those problems if I wasn't able to exert less effort, cognitive, load to the things that kind of came more naturally because of the experience I had. So long answer, but yeah, man.
Wonderful answer. I think we've talked about so much, Eric. We've given them more than nuggets. This is an alternative name for the podcast. It's Bridges of Understanding yourself, understanding others. Eric's like, that's not bad. I'm going to be honest, that's not bad. You know, it's also not bad. That bicep right behind you. Once again, hey, that's what's up. Oh, that's E. Helms back there. Check that out. I mean, if you're only listening to the audio, we salute you. You're busy. You're driving. You're doing your thing. The video is a lit component, I must say. Eric, I want to ask you this because I do feel we've covered a hell of a lot. And this might be, I've been at various junctions in my life where the right thing happened at the right time to really, set myself up. And I almost feel that, not that this episode's one of gratitude, but I had that reflection. Like Mike was asking that question. It's like, Omar, seems like your training is going well. It's kind of bizarre where it's going better than it has in a long time. And not that I'm putting in less effort, but like as an example, my body's not achy. Every single workout, I'm not needing to get mentally prepared to a certain level. Like I'm once again going to war. And it's almost this internal reflection or some of these things that you realize are happening without even realizing it's happening. As you said, it's like, oh, this is normal. Like I'm supposed to have a libido. Like, oh, wait a sec, I'm not getting irritable at people. That it's wonderful. Some of the things that you can experience. And I only hope that everyone gets that opportunity with enough time under the barbell to experience all the different changes, both positive and negative, because as you say, Eric, it's like informed consent around here where there's a lot of stuff that goes on, man. And if you pay attention, if you open up your ears or you open up your eyes and you have the ability then to reflect, it could be a wonderful journey.
Well said. Bridges over understanding counting. I think that's the name of this rom-com. It's been a pleasure to meet over these bridges, under these bridges with the trolls. There's a lot of bridges going on.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you said it well. I think it's if I was to give one final nugget of understanding to be under the bridge, this is a bridge over nuggets now. It sounds like we're in gold rush country. It's that when you think about your goals, when you think about changing things, when you think about seeing little reductionist pieces of stuff like a study I post or a point someone makes about a finite aspect of nutrition or training, consider it, value it, see if it can help you, but from the perspective of playing the long game. Keep playing chess, and it's it is a challenge, but it is kind of the double mindset that you eventually get to of being able to be in the present moment, having your phone on airplane mode, being present for the set, giving your all during training, and being immersed in the moment. And trying to find that flow state that I think is what occurs during these studies where people make better gains, while also then being able to step out of it, put the hardcore card back in your pocket and go, all right, let me think about the long game here. And it's that marriage between those two mentalities and knowing when they should each be in play and what is the underlying factor, whether it's passion or fear and anger, that will eventually help you get to the point where you are a lifer and you are making progress to the best state of your capabilities.
We're making everyone lifers. And let me just say that if you want to listen to the two hunks behind me, if you're on video, Eric, why don't you actually start just real quick? Because I feel irresponsible if I'm being perfectly transparent because, again, 80% of our audience listens to the audio only. Can you do me a favor real quick and just describe the two gentlemen behind me just so they can have the visual reference of what I'm describing?
It's very simple. If you think of Lethal Weapon meets Pumping Iron, that's what we got. We got a buddy cop movie where the only thing getting arrested is not making gains. And not even arrested. We got mayhem and havoc, just slaying people all day long. We got a one gentleman doing the Zoolander face who's slightly taller. Looks like a shaved version of me because it is me without a beard and mustache back in 2017. And then we have a unshaved version of Omar. It's almost like we just swapped facial hair for this picture. Wearing, I think, the exact same bandana. Is that accurate?
It is. This is my good luck bandana. We've been through a lot.
So it's a lucky picture, back to back. I look more funny. Omar looks more serious. It's great because it's clearly been a role reversal over time. But I look like the joking, non-serious cop. Omar looks like the by the book, but still hardcore cop. And I tell you what, we're out here abusing the rights of people who don't have muscles on a day-to-day basis in these streets. Okay, that's what there is behind us.
I love it. Yeah, abusing people that are too weak to stand up to us, which is just what we do around here. The buddy cop is, of course, called Bridges of Understanding or Misunderstanding. So it's Bridges of Understanding, but then there's like just drawn on misunderstanding next to it. Stay tuned, iTunes. Go ahead and leave us a rating and review because we will be reading the reviews, so we'll be putting you on notice. Special thanks to that first review of that guy, Berto Nunez. Sounds like a lovely name of the person. We appreciate the things that you say, and I just love how organic these reviews come. We're not coursing anyone to make these reviews. Just it's happenstance. So go ahead, leave the ratings and reviews. Select the rating you want to leave. Typically, what we see is 5 stars. On YouTube, you could go ahead and leave a comment. We do our best to respond. We're back every single Monday. So what's going on? You're listening to this in 2094. Both of us, unfortunately, have, let's say 2274, because I feel like they're going to figure out a few things there to extend life, but not make us immortal. So by then, we probably will be deceased. And you're listening to this, yeah, we're back, though, next Monday. So don't worry about it. This statement holds true irrespective of what time we're speaking about. So we'll see you next Monday.